All right, guys, welcome back to the Harlan Podcast YouTube channel. And today we're doing the very first episode of tier list rankings. And I thought it'd be fun to start off with some Big Brother stuff and do all Big Brother returnees. So, the way this ranking system is going to work is pretty simple. Everything that I'm basing my opinion on today in terms of, who's going where and where on the rank system they're going to go is all based on the season they're returning for. So they can be on this list more than once if they return more than once, but their first seasons, no matter who it is going to be disregarded, and we're only going to focus on the season that they returned for. And other than that, it's going to be pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to explain why everyone's getting ranked, where they're getting ranked. So, shout out to whoever made this tier list. It's a pretty sick idea. We're going to start off with Allison here. Well, nowhere else to put her. She got evicted first on All Stars. One of my favorite players. I loved her in her first season. I think she's a dominating strategist, one of the better manipulative players ever played the game. But in season seven, she played way too hard, way too fast. I think she knew she had a bit of a target on her back going in, and she was trying to overconcentrate. Like she was trying to, do too much to fog up um, the communications and make her take that target on her back and lessen it, but it just grew it to the point where she was the person that ended up going home first. All right, next on the list is Mike Boogie. And not for season seven, we're doing it for season 14, first year when he came back to be a coach. It's another one, a great player. Um, he's proven he can play the game well, but on this season specifically, there wasn't much that he really did right, honestly. In season 14, his coaching in terms of picking good players, he did a great job there. But then when it came to really play the game socially, he was a little too aggressive with his strategy. He's a little too in your face. He lies a little too much. He trusted the wrong people. And he's too conniving. He's one of those people that you talk to him, but you can't listen to a word he says. And on season 14, everyone seen right through him. And the only lifeline he really had in the game was Frank. And well, he was next to Frank, and there's nothing he could do at that point. So he's another one that's going in that D tier, despite how great of a player he may be and how what he may have been able to prove on a previous season. 14, he just wasn't able to live up to the legend. And next on this list is Brendan, another guy going in the D tier, another person that I really like. I really liked him on his first season, season 12. I thought he was a fantastic competitor, great underdog. He's not the greatest at the social game aspect or the strategical aspect, but he wasn't lousy either. He's a smart guy. He knows how like what's important in Big Brother. He just doesn't know how to utilize it to his advantage. And in season 13, you know, there's proof is in the pudding. He made an alliance, but he didn't have anything outside that alliance to protect him. So when his time came and one of his alliance members decided it was time to get rid of him, there was nothing he could do. He had nothing to defend himself. He wasn't winning competitions like he was back in season 12. He tried to play a little bit more of an alliance game, more of the numbers game, and the numbers were just never really in his favor. And once he lost power, he kind of figured that out, and it was a little too late for him to do anything about it. Even after returning to the game, he got bounced pretty much instantly. So, but great player in his first season, I'd say, in terms of underdog. Another player here, someone that I actually believe improved in terms of their gameplay is Brittany Haynes. Season 12, she was a good player in season 12, but she lacked the social awareness to win the game. She got far because she made the right ties with the right people that led to those people with those ties getting into power, keeping her safe, and for that part, good job. But her social awareness in terms of realizing who was with who, where the lines were drawn, knowing when to make good moves and when to take shots, she just wasn't able to she was able to win power, but she didn't really do much with her power. She played a lot for other people and not a lot for herself. In season 14, though, when she came back to be a coach, she was heavily influencing the game straight from the beginning. She's actually one of the few coaches that was controlling the game without being an actual player. People trusted her. Her players trusted her. They wanted to work with her. So the moment she get back into the game, of course, she found herself in a majority alliance that was winning competitions, controlling what was happening. She had great social connections that ultimately came down. The only reason she got evicted at the end of the day is because it was her or Dan Giesland. and not many people are going to be able to take Dan Giesland on in a one-on-one and come out victorious. So sadly, she got outplayed by the better player, but there wasn't many other players on her season that would have been able to take her out if it wasn't for him. So in terms of social game, her social game was great. She did a good job communicating with everybody, building those relationships, smart, strategical connections. She made sure that she was good on most sides when she could. She tried to keep her social game strength, or strong, with the even with the minority players, in terms of like players that weren't in the bigger majority alliance or weren't part of that quack pack. And she did a good job for as long as she could. Eventually, her game caught up to her, and she ended up getting outplayed, like I said, by Dan Giesland. There's not much you can do there. All right, someone here that I think is also someone that kind of stepped up in the strategical sense and the social sense of their game, is Danielle Donato, season 13, coming back at the duelist twist with her father again. A lot of question marks. In my opinion, I was expecting um, less than what I ended up getting, honestly. And I think that it was beneficial for her to get the chance to play without her father, who got ejected early on in the season due to health related issues, which sucks. But I think it gave Danielle that opportunity to play a solo and kind of new game. The only issue with this is that I think Danielle started trying to play way too hard too quick. Once that jury stage hits, you see her turn on her alliance. You see, like, up until that point, she has 3 weeks of freedom, complete safety, no ties to a duo. She's got her alliance, then she got great connections outside of that alliance. She's doing a great job early game. It's just that middle game catches up to her too quickly. She's doing too much. She's getting involved in arguments and drama between other house guests. She's turning her back on people in her alliance. She's picking sides too early. And as much as I love the aggressive play style, it's entertaining to watch. In terms of actual gameplay, it's not the greatest. I think that she could have went a lot further, maybe even won, if she played a little bit smarter and was more strategic in her move set in terms of timing. Because Big Brother is a game about timing and numbers, and I think if she timed her moves more precisely, she would have had better numbers moving on into the later game. Where I think that she, as a great competitor that she is, I mean, tied for the most veto wins in a season, she could pick it up, probably win herself um, that season, really. But moving on to another great Danielle in the Big Brother world, we got Danielle Reyes, who is one of my all-time favorite players. Once again, if this is her first season, she's S tier, no doubt. She's a masterful player, a mastermind, one of the greatest players that have ever touched this game. But just based on All Star, she comes in and she has a completely different strategy. After she tries the manipulative strategy, she tries that little bit of an aggressive strategical play with Allison in the first week, and it almost gets her evicted. And she realizes that she needs to tone it down. She tones down her gameplay. She makes smart connections early on. She finds, someone that she can trust 100% and that 100% trusts her and James. And she makes smart connections with Chilltown, and she makes good connections with the people outside of the season 6 alliance and outside of the Chilltown alliance. So she has numbers. She becomes less and less of a target moving on to the later weeks of the game. But it's one of those situations where that she kind of played into the hand of her opponents. She made bigger moves early on. She won competition. She took out Kaser, but and obviously in hindsight, it's a move that was more positively affected Will and Boogie, who never had the intentions on bringing Danielle past 6 or 7, and ultimately that's when she got bounced. She's a great player. I like that she changed up her gameplay. She played definitely a more honest and truthful game. She definitely had her lies and deceit, though. She was entertaining to watch. She still had a fantastic social game. She made sure she had those connections. Ultimately, There were just other players playing a better game than her. That's really what it comes down to. Other people having their connections on lock, tighter than her. And it was really coming down to who has a stronger connection to Erica, Boogie or Danielle. And Boogie just knew what he was doing. Boogie and Will really had this plan set, and there wasn't much she could do, sadly, and she got evicted. But she had a good season, not as good as her first, but still a good season. And here we go, moving on to arguably one of, if not the greatest returning season we've ever seen. We got Dan Giesland. I mean, S tier easily. Uh, I don't even want to talk about his first season because as great as that is, season 14, in my opinion, is one of the most most entertaining and interesting gameplays we're ever gonna see from a player. Uh, Dan's strategy, I love everything about it. He plays the early game perfectly. He lays low. He realizes he's losing players quickly. He's down to one player. He allows her to play the social game that she needs to play, build the connections that she needs to play, and rides those connections while also trying his hardest to break into whatever alliances and work with any other veteran players that he can. So he at least has something going for himself. This is the game that he was kind of going with as a coach. He was letting Danielle take the wheel as much as she could. And he tried to wiggle his way in there, but of course he's Dan, so he has a reputation. A lot of people didn't want to trust him. But when the second half of this game comes up, that's when we see the Dan Giesel that we were used to. And that is the insanely good, manipulative, strategic Dan Giesland that can't seem to lose to a single person. He dominated the second half in completely dominating fashion. Um, Arguably one of the greatest, like the flashiest games I've ever seen. Huge moves from the Dan's funeral to the Shane backdoor. There's so much to getting Ian and Danielle to throw the HOH competition. There's just so much that Dan did, and everything was more entertaining than the last thing he did. He's just so good at the game. Ultimately, he ended up losing. It's obviously with only one vote in the final two against Ian. Ultimately, it comes down to a lot of he's already won before. People don't want to vote for another winner, and a lot of people upset about his, you know, you could argue a moral game, swearing on this, that, or whatever he could to get to the end. People, and that's it is what it is. Sometimes there's certain people you just can't convince once they get to that jury house. They've already made up their mind. I think a lot of people made up their mind that they were not voting for Dan. Aside from that, everything up until that final two, gameplay wise, week to week move, uh, decisions being made, um, thinking outside of the box, adding unique strategy. Dan is a completely different player than we've ever seen before and we'll ever see again. His gameplay is wild. It's like I said, out of the box. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Um, yeah, he's a mastermind player, and there goes with no doubt in my mind, at least, that he is second greatest player of all time. And like I said, one of the greatest returning performances we've ever seen from a player ever. And he had so much odds stacked against him. He should have been the first one to go out of those coaches. Really, I mean, the moment that he only had one player left, they should have just got rid of Danielle because it gets rid of Dan. But he manages to slither his way week by week by week by week, just barely dodging those bullets, coming up with the craziest strategies to do it, and it's successful. And I applaud him. He's a great player, and I think that he's one of the greatest of all times, of course. So, yeah, he's moving on to Davon. We have um, personally one of my favorite players to watch. I love her DR. She's really entertaining. She has like a lot of game awareness. That's something I always appreciate from someone. Like if you can be aware and notice things that are going on around you, I really appreciate that in a game player. It tells me that they're not only paying attention to everything, but they're questioning everything. They're not being blindly loyal. They're not playing a foolish game. They're there to win. And when you play very aware like that, it tells me that you're in it to win. You're in it to win, and I appreciate that. Sadly, as in it to win as Davon may have been for season 18, I have to put her in the D tier because She played really well for those first couple of weeks of the game. Socially, she was in everyone's ear. She had her vet thing going on, her team, and then she branched outside of all of that to make sure she had good connections. But when the game goes on a little bit in like the later half of the pre-jury, you can kind of notice when her game starts to fall apart, and it's pretty early. And she gets this tunnel vision on getting rid of this one player, and we'll talk about that player in a second here. And it kind of really hurts her game, and it really hurts his game, and she ultimately outplays him and beats him in the situation. But she sacrifices her own gameplay because it takes her out of what's happening around her and all the other things that are starting to develop, whether it's allegiances, whether it's backdoor plans, whatever moves might be happening in the future. Sadly, Devon kind of gets taken out of the game early on because of her tunnel vision on this one player, and it led to her game kind of collapsing and her overplaying a little too hard too early, and people realizing that she's got a really entangled game. She's tied with a lot of people. It's a little messy, and eventually people stop trusting her. She makes it to the jury, of course. She's the first juror, sadly. But like I said, she's a really entertaining personality. I think that she's great game awareness. There's definitely things about her gameplay that are great. I would say she's probably, in terms of her returning performance compared to everyone else on this list, she had the best one. Not on this list, but on this in this tier, she's probably had the best one. But I don't think anyone in a tier above her played any worse than her, sadly. Like I said, she's a great personality, someone I always enjoy watching, someone that I think translate more than just the game. She's someone that's always been great for the show and the season because she's someone that you can have a good time just watching and listening to. That aside, gameplay wise, season 18, she had some potential there. It fizzled out early on, and it was just kind of a countdown to her eventual eviction. All right, next on the list, Diane, season 7. Other E tier. It sucks. Love Diane. I was so excited to see her in All Star. She played a great game in BB5. There was definitely some missteps on the way, a little bit of fog in her who she should have trusted. I know a lot of people like her a little bit more than I do, but I always really enjoy her. I think that she was definitely deserving of All Stars and a great player. Sadly, on All Stars, it just comes down to a lot of things happening. She had the preseason alliance with Jay. She had a relationship with Nakomes that was really like out there. It was in front of everyone's face. Everyone kind of knew about it. She has like a lot of hurdles that she has to leap over in that early stage of the game to really have a chance at getting far and getting to the end. Sadly, she wasn't able to do it. She was considered a floater. A lot of people were questioning where her loyalties lied. There were so many rumors about who she might be or might not be working with. People started devaluing her as a player in a number. People started thinking that they don't need her anymore and they're better off just getting rid of her. I think that if Diane had a little bit more of an aggressive game within that first half, maybe won a competition, not even it's not really even competition, just more was more aggressive in her strategy, was more involved in conversations, made smarter relationships, that she definitely could have done some damage in the second half. Sadly, we never got to see it. So I got to put her on the D list because she just played a little too soft and she kind of played into the hands of people that like Will and Mike that were using that to their advantage. Get rid of the floaters, get rid of the floaters. I mean, like Diana and Nakomes are not playing, they're not doing anything, and the less aggressive you played on All Stars was one of the few seasons where it actually negatively affected your game. So, like I said, enjoy her as a player. It sucks, but I think that if she ever came back in for a third time, I could see her doing great again. All right, next up on the list is Dick Donato. Obviously, D tier, sadly. Dick is someone that I think genuinely was going to be a front runner for season 13 if he didn't get medically evacuated or expelled or whatever. Um, there's not much to say about this. Sadly, it's a horrible circumstance. We can't really talk about his gameplay because we didn't see much. He got forcefully removed from the game week 2, but week 1 he was showing great signs of positive game in the future. He had a strong alliance set up for him, a fantastic social game. A lot of the newbies were like in this worshiping mode of him, like, this is Evil Dick. I love this guy. I love Evil Dick. He had a lot of great relationships going through to the next week. I think that if he could have kept those relationships, kept with his alliance, kept in power those first few weeks of the game. He had a good chance of being influential in the second half of the game, which could have led to him maybe getting a second win. I don't know. That's a lot of speculation, obviously. He didn't make it past the first week, so there's not much I can really say. So I'm just saying those are kind of my feelings when I did hear about it, the expulsion. I was really upset about it because I thought he showed improvements, but at the end of the day, there's not much we can do about it. But like I said, great player in his first season, great personality. He's always someone that's great to watch on your TV just because he brings the energy that not a lot of other people bring to the show. So he's always great TV. And now we got Erica, and she's gonna be the first one in the A tier. I think Erica's one of the most underrated players to play the game, and that's specifically because of her season 7 gameplay, which in my opinion was fantastic. Now, of course, you got to have like a little doubt and a little bit of like the negative reflection of her game because she was heavily manipulated, obviously, and there was a few moves that she made that were not beneficial for her game. But ultimately, even with those things being stated, she got herself into the final two, and she made arguably one of the greatest pleas to somebody, saving herself in the final four, getting Janelle to evict Will, which was arguably the biggest move of that entire season and put Erica in a position for the first time where she genuinely had a chance to win. Ultimately, it came down to one of those situations where more people were bitter towards her than they were Mike. They felt like she didn't really own up to her gameplay as much and that she was a little bit more of a follower than a leader. But I believe that she played great. She had the competition wins that she needed. She had a fantastic social game. There weren't many people in that house that did not trust her and did not want to work with her. And strategically, I think that for the most part, she did a good job sticking with the right people, being in the right alliances, voting out the right people for her game. It was more like the midway point where like evicting Danielle, I thought was a really questionable strategical move. So I can't say too much about her strategical game positively because I think that was a bad move. I think that put her in a really bad situation. But ultimately, like I said, she fought around it. Um, Convincing Janelle to evict Will, which I mean, obviously half that's Janelle, but I think half that's also Erica making sure she says the right things, deciding what to expose, making sure that she got into her ear before anyone else could have. And it was fantastic. And it's one of my favorite TV moments, despite Will be my favorite player of all time, because pure, it's a pure example of great, unexpected gameplay just coming out of nowhere. And I think it was kind of like an exclamation mark on Erica's game in terms of she really has played a really great mental, strategical, social game. Like I said, I think that she's one of the better, well-rounded players from that season. Moving on to Frank, season 18. You got another one for the D tier. Another guy I was really disappointed with season 18, even though at first I was like, okay, I like this. He's a lot more aggressive socially, and that was his biggest issue in season 14 was that he came in, played a little bit of an aggressive role, tried to play this leader role, like we got to go against the coaches. We got to go against the coaches. He won competitions early on, and it kind of ruined his game. He had no chance of winning. Season 18, he played a very opposite game, but he kept one thing intact. He overplayed and he's too aggressive. And in season 18, he played way too hard, way too early. He got his hands in too many cookie jars. He was in too many people's heads. And eventually, people started noticing that, using it against him. They started planting those seeds, and those seeds grew pretty quickly into giant trees of Frank hate. And he ended up getting himself played and taken out right there at the end of the pre jury stage. Um, yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say about it. He was looking like he had the potential to play a good game and get fire, but he stumbled and he proved that when he's down, he can't get back up. Once he went down, it took him a long time to realize that he was even being targeted. And once he did, he didn't do much to get himself out of that spot, at least successfully, that's for sure. And it sucks, but he just didn't play a very good game. Next on this list, Chicken George. Chicken George. Love Chicken George. Love everything about the guy. The personality of him, he's fantastic. I love the dynamic of having him on the season in the first place. Someone that's never really played the actual game of Big Brother, being on All Stars. was fantastic. And I loved watching him learn the game, learning those dynamics socially, learning those strategical aspects of the game, and actually getting quite decent at it. That's why I have him up here on the C tier. I think that he actually had a very good social game, a little bit of a floating game. People tried to get the cop out and get rid of him as an easy evict, but he fought to save his life. And when he did, he was successful. He won that veto and he did everything he could to get it. And then when he got that veto, he went out of his way to make sure that he had very good social ties. And I think that Chicken George is someone that I genuinely believe that if he was on any other season, like somewhere between season 2 to 6, we see much better gameplay from him. Sadly, with him being on All Stars, he didn't have much of an advantage. He had more of a disadvantage. He's learning how to play the new game while everyone else already knows, and everyone else is using using the things that they made mistakes on in their previous seasons to their advantage to improve. While he's never made those mistakes, so he makes those like rookie mistakes. He annoys the house guests in ways that most house guests know not to annoy them, and it sucks. And he painted a target on his back a little bit early on, also because of this. It is what it is at the end of the day. I think that if he had played somewhere between 2 and 6 and before 7, and was given the opportunity to play the game and go through all the mistakes that you make on the first time playing, that he could have been a lot better in season 7. But I still think that he played pretty well. He wasn't horrible by any means, in my opinion, and um, I enjoyed watching him. Next up, we got Howie. Howie, yeah, Howie. He's a great personality, uh, big personality, entertaining, funny one-liners. The dynamic between him and Will was hilarious. It was always great to watch those segments. Um, Jury House segments, I would lean more towards it a little too much, but I know there's lots of people that love them. I know a lot of people that love that bigger, aggressive Howie personality. Sadly, gameplay doesn't really translate a lot early on in the stages of the game. He benefits heavily from his alliance and having influence within the season 6 alliance, and having protection from them winning power. Um, but he also does a good job at having stronger social connections as well, and making himself, despite being considered one of the better physical players to ever have played the game at the time, he does a really good job at making himself non-threatening because of his social connections and making sure that he's good on all sides. Eventually, he gets outplayed by better players, and he gets blindsided, and it's like a last second thing. And like I said, it's one of the most intense moments in the history of the show. One of my favorite moments is this Howie blindside. I love everything about it. Um, but yeah, he's not a bad player. Season 7, he wasn't horrible. He doesn't have the strategical ability to compete against the people that were coming after him. Socially, I think that he's solid, and like I said, he made the right like allegiances early on, getting people that could get power. Eventually, those people didn't have power, and when they didn't, Howie was one of the first ones to go. And yeah, it is what it is. Next, we got James from season 18. People might think he's a little too high on this list. I think he's perfectly ranked. He got third place as a returnee, which is a huge thing because you come in as a returnee going against newbies like James, and you got like a big target on your back right off the bat because people know you. They have these thoughts and these predetermined opinions on your gameplay, and they think they know you as a player. And James actually came in with a little bit of a stronger reputation than the other vets, other than Frank, really. But compared to Nicole and Dave Vaughn, he would have been one of the bigger targets. He was known for winning competitions and making huge moves and stabbing people in the front when he nominated Shelly and Clay. And he made those big moves for his game, and he always played for himself. And he played a good social game in his first season. But we're not talking about season 17 when it comes to this ranking. We're talking about season 18. Socially, James was incredible. There wasn't a person that didn't love James in season 18. He made sharp, smart connections. He was constantly in people's ears. His biggest problem is his strategical game, and that comes from his lack of aggression on the strategical side and wanting to be the head of things. He didn't really determine things that went on. He didn't play much of a role in week to week decisions, and he kind of followed a lot of people's lead. And I always say that's not necessarily a bad thing all the time, but most of the time, I say 99% of the time in Big Brother, when you're following other people's leads more than you're taking leads, you're really playing for second or third place. And James, he got third place and he didn't really have a chance of beating anyone else in the end. And then that's just what it is. A great social game, but he didn't have strategical game or big moves to back up the social game at the end of it. Even if he wasn't that final two, he ended up losing that final HOH, so I guess he got evicted. But he's a good competitor that can win when he needs to. He's, like I said, fantastic social game. It's just that strategic game that really weighs him down. If he had a better strategical game, this is someone that I could argue maybe would have been one of the better players of the new school generation. Moving on to another James, but this time James Ryan, one of my favorite players. This is for season 7, though. As much as I love James, I think he's a fantastic player. He's a BB legend. Season 7 James didn't have the best gameplay. It kind of sucks, but and it sucks to say, but he kind of made a lot of mistakes early on. He took things a little too personally, held a little too many grudges, and it fogged up his vision in the middle part of the game where things were a little bit more important. And it led to him forcing himself in a situation where he had to trust people that he couldn't trust. Like he had to trust Chilltown. He couldn't trust Chilltown, but he put himself in that situation where he had no choice but to trust them because he severed ties so early on. Other than that, I think that he played a solid social game, and I understood what he was doing. I thought getting rid of Jace was a dumb move, and there is times where you have to choose between you and the alliance. And I thought that that week where he got rid of Jace was one of those weeks where you have to choose you over what your alliance is saying, and just hope that the alliance can understand it in the future weeks. Um, Little mistakes like that, then obviously the next week the Alliance deciding they didn't want to get rid of Chilltown again. That pissing James off due to the fact they promised they would, and then James wanted to like sever ties, and there was like all of that. He goes makes the Doom Alliance, which I thought was actually a really good move. It just sadly kind of put him in this situation where he's so aggravated at the original people in his alliance that he starts over trusting this Chilltown, the people that he wanted out in the first place, because he knows he can't trust, and they ended up outplaying him. And it's one of those situations where you just get outplayed. He's a good competitor. He obviously did not compete nearly as well as he did in his first season, but it's an all-star season. You're going against much better competitors, people that are thirsty for blood, trying to win everything. And James, I think he only won, what was it, one HOH, one POV, and then sadly wasn't able to pick up anything else to save himself. He just barely lost the OTEV competition. Um, because I always enjoy James. I love his DRs. I think that he's hilarious. And I think that he is one of the sharper strategical players in terms of he's always thinking about the smart strategical move. I just think in season 7, he played himself by letting himself get a little too emotional, holding those grudges. And if he let those grudges go a little bit earlier on in the season and started, comparing notes to other players, he could have started making bigger moves and he could have positioned himself better. That's my only notes on James. Here we go. We got Janelle, one of the all-time greatest players. But this is for season 14. Sadly, season 14, Janelle didn't do much really at all. She tried her hardest to play a social game for the first time, and sadly, it backfired negatively on her because she just couldn't get past the fact that there was always going to be people that wanted her out because she's Janelle. It's that simple. When you've won so many competitions, you're known as the greatest competitor to ever play the game, one of the greatest players. There's always going to be people that want you out. This was her third time playing. I don't hold them much against her. Sadly, season 14, she got bounced in the pre-jury after the coaches stage, and there wasn't much she could do. She did definitely try to fight a little bit, and it seemed like she could have made a couple and she was making a little bit of progress, but it just at the end of the day she got outplayed and she got taken out. And it's one of those situations where sometimes people go into a week with the mindset of we're doing this, and then that ends up getting done, and there's just not much you can do. And I think Janelle was in a situation where there wasn't much you could do to save herself, and there's not much more to say. She got evicted too early, so she has to be low on the list. But here we go with Janelle again. Season 7 Janelle, which is one of my favorite players ever. We're going to put her in A tier. Janelle is not the greatest social player in season 7. She wasn't the greatest social player. She was constantly being targeted because she's a competitor that is ruthless, and she's no problem going to someone's face and telling them how she feels. So socially, she's never been like one of the most socially aware players, let alone one of the best social players in terms of understanding social dynamics and getting in close with people and trying to control and get numbers. That just isn't her game. But her game is winning competitions, getting power, and making moves. And that's what she did. Though I will say the moves weren't the greatest things in the world, taking out her like some of her own allegiances and over trusting in Chilltown and continuing to keep them around, even though they would stab her in the back, stab her in the back, stab her in the back. She just kept trusting, trusting, and trusting. But like I said, she's a beast competitor. She broke, I think, both records in her, like for veto and HOH. Actually, I don't know if she broke the HOH. I think she tied for HOH in season 6. And I don't know if she broke it, or I mean, tied again in season 7. But I know she broke the power of veto record in season 7. At the time, she had set it for beat James in the season beforehand. This time with 5 instead of 4. Um, she, she had the solo to evict Dr. Will, and even though I do credit a lot to Erica, just the right conversation at the right time, I gotta say that Janelle evicting Will is a huge move. It was unexpected. A lot of people didn't see it coming, and she got rid of the best player and the player that seemed like he had the best chance of winning the game. And like I said, she's a dominating competitor. Sadly, she's one of those players that when she doesn't win, she doesn't have much of a chance to stay. Everyone wants her head in the stake. Everyone wants her gone. And in that final 3 situation where she's winning against either one of them, no matter what, neither one of them are going to want to take it to the end. So the moment she lost that final HOH, I think everyone here knew she was gone. And it just comes down to that, just not being able to win that final competition. So close yet so far. And yeah, it is what it is. She's a great player, great competitor. She's not the greatest strategically or socially, but she's one of those players that she's so good competitively that she actually uses her competitions to help her in a social way where people, they see the value in keeping her around and working with her, even if she isn't the greatest at strategizing or, like I said, social awareness and social dynamics. But the competitions, they speak for themselves at the end of the day. And she is, in my opinion, the greatest competitor to ever play our game. So that's what it is. All right, we got Jace, another D tier, and this one sucks because I love Jace. Season 5 Jace is one of the most entertaining players ever. Big personality, beast of a competitor. He wants to win, 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 win. He'll do anything to get to the end of the game. He'll do anything in his power. He doesn't care. He'll be conniving, lying, do what he got to do to win. But he overplays way too hard, way too fast. Happened in season 5, he got bounced. Happened in season 7, he got bounced. Um, yeah, it sucked. In season 7, he played way too hard strategically and socially, though it looked like he was playing a much better game on both ends there. He got caught quickly. He would literally run from the season 6 alliance, then go to the Chilltown and Floaters and say the same thing to each other. And it's one of those situations where you can play that game, but the moment that people start comparing notes, you are screwed. You're done. You're toast. And there's nothing you can do about it, really. And that's what happened to Jace. People compared notes, and there was nothing Jace was going to be able to do to save himself. As hard as he tried and as much energy he put into this game, the moment 2 people said, "Hey, I just had this conversation with Jace," oh, I did too. It was too late for him. All right, here we go. We got Jason. Jason's gonna go B tier, and the only reason I don't have him A tier is the only reason. Love him. He's a great player. The only reason why we're not gonna have OTT Jason A tier is because OTT is such a different game from the real Big Brother with the fan votes, with the whole way the finale works. And other things with this game is it was good. He had good social game. He did a good job. He understands social dynamics very well, and he knows how to integrate himself into alliances and um, form good connections with people on either side to keep himself safe. He's a great competitor. He can win when he has to, and he wins quite a bit. And he's one of those people that he built a side of the house and he led that side of the house. But it's one of those situations where he didn't make many moves aside from the ones you expected, and he didn't do a great job in the second half of the game integrating himself with the other side of the house when it came down to like it's you everyone's going after Jason, everyone's going after Jason if they're not in that alliance. And um I hope I'm explaining myself well here, but it simply comes down to this. Jason, as great of a player as he can be, and as much as he understands the social dynamics of the house and the game, and he understands that he has to integrate himself. The second half of that game, he stopped caring about integrating himself. He focused more on winning competitions and sticking with his people, which just led to him being targeted by the other side of the house, and he wasn't protected at all times. It kind of came to a situation where he had to win to stay safe, and that's just kind of where I pin down his downfall in the game. And I think that he would be a better player if he put more energy into socializing and building those relationships with everybody instead of just certain people. But I think Jason's one of those players that's always going to just care about those people he connects with right off the bat, and those are the only people he cares about. And if he doesn't connect with you, then who cares? And as far as he's concerned, you're not valuable enough to his game anymore because you guys at the end are on the same page. And I can appreciate that, but I think that gameplay wise, it's not great. But I think that he played a pretty great game, all things considered, especially with the whole structure of OTT. It's a complicated game. Despite being a returnee, he was still kind of learning the new game because it is still a different game. But he came in with both an advantage of having the experience, but the disadvantage of having the experience, right? Like people are like, it's Jason, maybe we got to get rid of him. But yeah, that's what I would say with Jason. We got Jeff, season 13. He's going to go B tier with these guys. Jeff, season 13. Seemed like he had everything put together. He had everything ready. He had a grasp on the social dynamics for the first very well. He was socially well connected. He had great alliances, the alliance with Adam, Portia, Shelley. Then he had the vet alliance. He was well protected on most sides. It comes down to him getting outplayed. Shelley flipping the switch last second to get rid of him while she could. One of the biggest moves, one of the greatest moves, blindside turn, a double eviction. He got taken out by Kalia, Portia, and Shelley. Those are great players, though. So there's not much to be disappointed in. It's one of those situations where he didn't see it coming, so there wasn't much he could do. It's during a double eviction, so there's not much time for you to say anything or do anything to keep yourself protected. It's a double eviction backdoor. It was one of the, in my opinion, one of the strongest, yet one of the harshest moves I've ever seen made. But it's what happens when you're controlling the game and you're leading the house. And he did it on his season with Jesse when he got rid of Jesse with the coup d'etat. And Karma came back, bit him in the ass, got rid of him in the double eviction. And I thought he played a great game though up to that point. Social game was really good. He had himself well aligned with people. Like I said, his social dynamics and understanding of the social dynamics. I felt like he played one of like his best mental game as well. I'd argue that if he made it a little bit further, that this was a better performance than a season 11 game. But he just got outplayed at the end of the day, and it's one of those situations where he screwed up in the power veto competition, and if he just won that power veto during the double, he would have stayed safe, and he probably could have got to the end and won, but he just didn't. So he got booted, and it was a great move by great players. He's a great player himself. They were just greater at that time. So, yep, that's what it is. Season 11, Jesse. Love this guy. He's going C tier. Normally, I'd put him D tier, but his game in terms of this guy controlled people in season 11, unlike we'd ever seen really before this. We never really seen this amount of mental domination in terms of these people, when he got evicted, cried for days about his eviction. They were ridiculously saddened. People that were nominated and didn't go home were mad that Jesse went home over them. That's the kind of manipulation Jesse had over those house guys. It got a little ridiculous to the point where I was even like, it's a little over the top, right? Like, people can't be that upset about this, but they genuinely were upset. Like, and that's the thing that showcases how great Jesse's game was. His game in that pre-jury stage is fantastic. Socially, great. He's controlling almost everything that happens. He's getting in every HOH's ear. He's getting his plans. He's getting his plans ready and set and for the week, and boom, he's getting them done. And he's 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of people. But the one week that he's about to get bounced, he is 1, 2 steps behind the people that had the knowledge he didn't have. Obviously, the coup d'etat. Jeff makes a huge power move, gets rid of the guy running the house. It's a big move. Sadly, I wish I could put Jesse higher on this list. I think that if he makes it past that week, he probably goes very far and has a good chance of winning. But like I said, he got outplayed at the end of the day. There's not much you can do. He got twisted out. I'm not going to hold it against him. Like really up to that point, his gameplay was pretty phenomenal, pretty dominating. Um, it's one of those situations we got to expect the unexpected, and I guess he should have just done more that week, in terms of accumulating votes in case this did happen. Like he did know this was a possibility. He was speculating that this could happen to him. He just didn't do a good enough job accumulating those votes, moving up to that eviction, and making sure that if that happened, he was going to be safe against anyone. And he ended up getting bounced because of it. At the end of the day, it happens. Great player though. And then we got Jordan, season 13, gonna go to B tier. She made the final four despite being a winner. One of the better returning performances from a winner if we're just counting placement wise. But even in terms of social game, I've always viewed Jordan as one of the best social players, someone about her personality that people love. They just cling to it. They really, really, really like her. And because she's really nice, she's really sweet. She has like that country girl stereotype to her in terms of like the sweet voice and the night, you have great conversations with her, and it really works in her advantage. And she definitely uses it to her advantage in the game. Her social game is fantastic, like I said. But strategically, she's not great. Obviously, she leans heavily on Jeff for the strategical side of the game, but she's also capable of winning competitions herself if she needs to. And she has a solid package for the game of Big Brother that works in her advantage. Obviously, worked in her first season and her second season. She nearly got to the end and won. So I got to give her credit where credit's due. Socially, there's not many players that could outplay Jordan, in terms of just building connections, building relationships, being high on people's list of people they want to keep safe, and being low on the priority list of people that people want to target. So I got to give her credit where credit's due. Like I said, great social player, and social game is one of them is the most important aspect of Big Brother. It's a social manipulation game. It's all about the social dynamics. It's a social experiment, and she knows how to play it to her advantage. So you got to give her the credit where it's due. All right, we got season 7 case. A lot of people probably be upset about this, but like I said, this is all aimed based on gameplay only. Personal opinion out the window. I love Kaser. I love him. Loved him on season 7. I thought he was a funny guy to watch. I loved his rivalry with Will. It's one of my favorite. It's honestly one of my favorite rivalries in all of Big Brother. Their DRs, their one-liners toward each other are hilarious. I really love everything about it. But Kaser, Big Brother may not be for him, like Dr. Will may have said. But in season 7, Kaser, he's one of those players that it seems like he knows what he's doing. He has a good grasp on the game. He has a good game awareness, and then he questions a couple things. He lets a couple people get in his ear, and then all of a sudden he makes the wrong move, and it leads to his demise. Kaser's someone that I think could have went further if he stuck more to his own guns and trusted his gut a little bit more, but he misplayed a couple steps, and people took advantage of that. They noticed when he messed up, and they used that to their advantage, and they knew they had to get rid of him early. He was a big threat early on, and people wanted his head, and they got it. So there's not much you can say other than he's on an all-star season. You got to be at your peak, and if you're not, you're getting bounced. And he got bounced early on because people acknowledge he's a big threat. And we got Marcellus. He's going to the D tier. I'm sorry. I like Marcellus. Normally he'd be on the C tier because he was a decent social player. But aside from that, he was always being grouped up into this floater group. He wasn't viewed as an important number by really anyone in the game. People didn't view him as someone they wanted to really keep around and protect. And that's honestly what ended up being the downfall of Marcellus's game. Despite having some sort of relationship with almost everyone in the house, he didn't have a relationship with anyone in the house that anyone else really valued. And that's what matters. In a social game like this, you need to have your relationship being valued by those other players to the point where they want to keep you safe and they won't want to come after you. Sadly for Marcellus, it just didn't work out in his favor. Like I said, he tried. He played a good social game in terms of he went out there and he tried to be in everyone's ear. He tried to have relationships with people. He tried to have those conversations. He had a good strategical mindset in terms of he knew who was running things. He knew who he had to target, but he kind of questions himself, and he kind of didn't act aggressive enough, fast enough, didn't win the competitions to really make the moves and shift the game. And ultimately, because of that, he didn't have much of an impact on the overall season, so he ended up getting taken out a little too soon. All right, we got season 7, Mike Boogie. He's going at the top of the A tier. I may even put him S tier. I don't know. But when it comes down to returning players impressing and surprising me, no one does it like Mike Boogie does it. Going from a Vic that I think fourth or third in his first season to being one of the greatest winners to ever play the game. It was really shocking, but extremely impressive, and I loved everything about his game. Very aggressive, strategical player. Fantastic social game. He did a very good job of getting in people's heads. He had an incredible alliance with Will, having two great strategical and social players in one alliance. Uh, adds for some incredible gameplay. And Mike, he had a hand in almost everything that was happening. He did a really good job of protecting himself when he had to. He did a really good job of protecting the people closest to him when he had to. His relationship with Erica, incredible relationship, game relationship to him, perfect relationship to push his game forward. He won the final 3 HOH just like he had to. He won the final 4 HOH. He's a good competitor. He wins when he needs to win. He got to the final 2. He had a fantastic speech. He answered the questions perfectly. He admitted to everything he did. He didn't try to hide behind anything, and he got those votes to win because of that. He had, like I said, like Chilltown pretty much dominated and controlled that entire season, and really were the deciding factor in a lot of things that happened, which means Mike Boogie played a big hand at being a deciding factor in a lot of things that happened, a lot of evictions. He's socially well connected. He's another player that really understands social dynamics and has really good game awareness, and he knows who's working with who. And he also did a good job at playing his own solo game. And a lot of people don't give him credit for playing his own game and consider him a sidekick. But there was a lot of things that he did, including throwing Will under the bus a couple times. Like he had a conversation with Danielle, where he's like, "Listen, whatever Will does, that's Will. I know you might not be able to trust Will, but it comes to me, like, I'm 100% with you. I'm your Jason, yada, yada, yada." And he does what he has to do to get to the end. He says what he has to say. He's a very conniving player. He's out for blood all the time, but he's a great one. He's a calculated player that makes great moves and has a great social game. In season 7, that all was showcased. Um, so like I said, I got to give credit where credit is due when it comes to this video. And Mike Boogie's, in my opinion, one of the best players on this list, without a doubt. And here we go, another D tier. We got Nakomes, which sucks because I love Nakomes. I mean, come on. She executed the first ever backdoor. She has her fingerprint on the game forever. I mean, there's not many people as influential and as important to the game as Nakomes is. Sadly, in season 7, she fell to the curse of getting that floater, not persona, but like reputation. The same thing with Diane. Like I said, she had the obvious relationship with Diane early on. She was pinned as a floater early on. It was used against her a lot. There wasn't much you could do. She wasn't as aggressive socially or strategically that was to benefit her game. And sadly, ultimately, she felt early. I think there is not much that really she could have done early on other than win a competition or two, really, to put herself in a better position anyway. So it's one of those situations where the game's kind of moving on around you and just without you, and she ended up falling out of it because of it. So I was a great player in her first season, but season 7, Nakomes, there's not much to talk about. She wasn't very didn't leave much of an impact on the game. And we got Nicole Franzel, and she's going in. She's going in A tier. I know it's gonna upset people, but she won as a returning on a season against I'm gonna say 14, sorry, 12 rookies. She had a huge target going on her back from the get-go. Won the first HOH. Smart move. And then really from there, her social game is nearly flawless. Her social game, like when it comes to social dynamics, she's one of the greatest at social dynamic game in terms of she makes sure that she's connected to the right people. She uses her connections to get mutual connections, use those mutual connections to get more mutual connections, and she's always well connected throughout the entire house. And that's something that's really positive of her game. I think she didn't get nominated until Final 4 on that season, which is insanely impressive. I mean, that's nearly um, the entire game without a single nomination. She She's one of those great players that knows how to lay low early on, build those relationships, strengthen those relationships, get them stronger and stronger and stronger. And then the second half of the game, pop up, make the big moves, get in people's heads, start the manipulation, win the competitions. And honestly, that's probably the best way to play Big Brother. And she proved it. And she made huge moves, convincing people to go against each other, keeping herself off the block, winning competitions, smart relationship with Corey. Both of them capable of winning competitions at the end, winning competitions to keep her safe, and ultimately getting Paul to bring her to final two. And she ends up beating him 5-4, close one, but she got it because she played an incredible game. She deserved it. Outside of that, I do think that there's also like a lot that goes against her too. Well, not a lot, but there's like some things. There's always some flaws to her game. That's why she's not in the S tier, but I think she played a pretty fantastic game for the most part, all things considered. Next, we got Paul, season 19. He's going in the S tier because we never, in terms of the manipulation game is one of the most dominating manipulative games we've ever seen and we ever will see. I mean, we call him a cult leader. He led a cult on Big Brother, a majority cult of about 8 to 10 people, and he controlled every single thing that happened in the game. He controlled people. He controlled who won competitions. There is not many people in this game, in the history of this game, that have ever decided week by week who was winning what. But Paul did. Paul's manipulation game in season 19, he chose who was winning HOH, who was winning POV. He dominated. He got people to throw everything. He got people to throw away their games to him. His manipulation game is incredible. His deflection game is incredible. He could stab you in the back. He could stab you in the front and you wouldn't know. His deflection game is that good that he could stab you right in the front and you'd have no clue. There was not a single thing that he didn't have a hand in during that season. And by a hand in, I mean there wasn't a single move that was made that season that he wasn't responsible for. He literally made every move. Everyone played Paul's game. Essentially, that entire season is a bunch of Pauls. And he sadly ended up losing 5-4 because jury management. Hence why jury management is very important. Paul didn't do a good job at explaining his game at the end either. He never really admitted it. His goodbye messages were bad as well because he kept lying to the house guest, and that's a really bad way of diffusing a bitter house guest, is continuing to lie to them and tell them they're dumb and they don't know. And making them think like, oh no, there's no way you can figure out that I was the one that got rid of you. And he just kept doing that, and then like that bitterness and that lack of awareness from him there, jury wise, is what lost him the game. And you got to hold it against him. It's a flaw, but it's the only flaw really when it comes to his game. He's a dominating competitor that broke records. I think he tied for the HOH record and then tied for the veto record in the same season. So that's really impressive. I think that's 9 competitions in 19 that he won, something like that. He's a fantastic competitor, fantastic player. Maybe not the funnest to watch. It was not the greatest season, but he did good. Next, we got Rachel. She's gonna go to the B tier because she won, but she's kind of like Janelle in terms of she's not great socially, not great strategically, but she can win, and she can win when it counts, and it wins and won her the game. So that's what matters. I do think at 13 though, she definitely put an effort more into her social and strategical game. The Bet Alliance was good for her game. She had a great relationship with Jordan, and she made sure that she was connected enough to the point where everyone wasn't going after her. But it was pretty early on in the game, I'd say, around after Jeff's eviction, where it was like win or you're losing. And having to win that early is a good sign that your social game wasn't that great. But strategically, I think she did a good job at evicting people at the right time. She always made the good move when she was HOH, got rid of someone that was coming after her. So I got to give her credit there. Like I said, she did a fantastic job competition-wise, credible competitor. There's not too much more to say about it. She won. She deserved it at the end of the day. She got the votes. That's one of the most important things. If you can get the votes to win, hell, you deserve it. So, there's not much more I can say. She's a great winner. She got it. She deserved it. Moving on to Will Kirby, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time. He's going right in the S tier. And in my opinion, this is the greatest season from a Big Brother player just about ever. insane amount of insanely dominating performance. One of the greatest, I think, examples of dominance and manipulation in Big Brother. His ability to control people that would look him straight in the face and say, "I want to get rid of you because you're a threat and you scare me and I want you out," yet still be able to somehow manipulate them into doing whatever they wanted is insane. There's not many people like this that can pull something like that off. And Will, he's one of those players. Like I said, and socially, he's one of those people. He's being targeted all the time, but he's really good because he has great charisma. He's charming. Like I said, great charisma, confidence. He does a really good job at getting people to like him, want to talk to him, have strategical conversations and personal conversations. He gets along with people. He uses that to his advantage. He's very, very, very well aware of everything going on. His game awareness is very high. His social, his he's probably one of the greatest in terms of social dynamics, just understanding social dynamics, knowing who is tied with who, knowing what you can say to what player. He's an incredible talker. He knows what words to use to his advantage. He knows um, what can get people on his side, and he knows how to manipulate people and doing what he wants. At the end of the day, he's the puppet master, and there's no one's taking that away from him. He got fourth place ultimately. His biggest mistake was not talking, was not getting to Janelle first, and instead celebrating getting to final three. And Mike Boogie is the biggest mistake he's ever made, but still does not take away from everything he did up to that point, which was phenomenal gameplay. He controlled that season up to that point. He had pretty much the brain behind about, I'd say, 80 to 90% of what happened in almost every week beforehand. Yeah, it's just a phenomenal game, great performance. All right, so guys, that's the end of the video. I'm not going to include any season 22 players, and the reason I'm not going to include All-Star 2 players is simply this. I'm going to do a whole ranking video just based on season 22 coming up next. We're going to talk about the season 22 cast, their all-star gameplay, and everything that went on. And I also have a recap podcast for the season coming after the winners announced. And I'm going to do all that when the season's officially over and I can give my full opinion on everything right away. And it's going to be fresh and all this great stuff. And until it's over, it's a little bit harder for me to, compare them to everyone else. I need a little bit of time also to digest the season and have my full thoughts. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. If you watch like all the way down to here, that's sick. I would appreciate it if you subscribe, like the video, put notifications on, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyways, this is my official ranking. Right here we have the top 3 performances by runner-ups, Paul, Dan, and Will. Then below them we got Mike, Erica, Janelle, and Nicole, all having phenomenal performances themselves. And the B tier we got Brittany, Danielle. Oh, I said runner-up. Sorry, returning players. I'm doing a runner-up one after this at some point, but yeah, like it's all there. Proofs in the pudding there. Top tier, the first tier, the S tier. They're the goats. They played better than any other returning player. A tier, nearly flawless. Just a little bit off. There's a couple flaws in their game, but still fantastic players. B tier, great players. A lot of them either evicted early or they're lacking a couple things in their gameplay that makes them a little less well-rounded than the players above them. C tier, players with great potential in their season that showed dominance a little early on in certain aspects, but when the game went on, they kind of started falling apart. And then D tier are just players that didn't really have a chance, whether it was that they were evicted super early or whether they played too hard too fast or they just didn't know what they were doing. And that's my reasoning for ranking these players where I rank them. I love it, brother. I think that these are all great players in their own right and all bring great things to the show. Um, but yeah, I know the video and have a good day, guys. So.